about royal trends nowadays, of course, we think about Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and how whatever she wears, people are very interested in. And what I like about Catherine is she's not wearing these designer couture things all the time. You know, she's wearing things that are very accessible for, you know, girls to go out and buy, whether it be young little girls from Claire Accessories or something, you know, where you think, yeah, that's reachable. And I think that's very clever of her. And I don't think it's, you know, done in purpose. I think she just likes the stuff. She's come back from a different era, a different sort of lifestyle growing up. And, you know, if she sees something and thinks, that looks nice, but whatever she wears, I think we all agree, she looks terrific. Somehow she can carry off the really, shall we say, money-saving things alongside the ones that are worth millions of dollars, like tiaras and unmentionable money, you know. That's the beauty. Now, another beauty inside the royal family was this lady. That's right, the Queen's sister, Margaret Rose, Princess Margaret, who literally was an icon to so many girls, it has to be said, throughout the 40s, 50s and into the 60s. But there was one particular thing that in fact could have made her a lot of money, and there's an interesting story behind this. As ever, let me explain. Morning, lovely to see you chums today. I hope you're keeping well, whatever you're doing. It is a funny thing, sorry, we'll have a wave. It's a lovely thing, isn't it, with royals and stuff, how you know, you are influenced by them. I remember sort of looking, even at a very young age, at Prince Charles when he was out and about, and I always liked the fact that he was impeccably dressed. He always had nice suits on, you know, and polished shoes and stuff like that. And that was, you know, sort of late 70s, early 80s when you're at school and you're thinking, everybody thought it was fuddy-duddy. I like the stylish people like Montgomery Clift, you know, Clark Gable. I loved his look in Gone with the Wind. You know, they're stylish people, and the royals are stylish. But the thing about the royals is sometimes there's some things that in fact, well, can get them into hot water. And there was no other royal that got herself in hot water more than Margaret Rose, Princess Margaret. You see, Margaret was a party girl, right? There's no two ways about it. She had that time. She enjoyed her life to the full extent. And unlike the Queen, she wasn't sort of weighed down by duty as such. She had certain charities, but she didn't necessarily have to be somewhere every single day. So every night was party time for Margaret Rose. But there was one habit that even she wished she could have kicked. Now, she basically blamed her late father, of course, King George, and this was because he said that he wished he'd never allowed her to see him smoking. That's right. Now, the habit is a strange thing, isn't it, really, when you think, because it never really took off for ladies until the flapper girls in the 1920s. Then it was seen as ultra cool, you know, a cigarette holder, and there you are going out to the best parties, the jazz age, all of that sort of stuff. But Princess Margaret famously said that it was her father, in fact, that really triggered the thing of how cool you could look holding a cigarette. And by the time she'd grown up, of course, and seen those wonderful Hollywood movies with Marlene Dietrich clouded in a mask of cigarette smoke, she thought this was a very glamorous look, something to emulate. And she carried on. Now, according to sources, Margaret could actually smoke up to 60 cigarettes a day. And they were very strong cigarettes indeed, not necessarily all the way through them. And get this, she even had people, what a glamorous life this must have been. She even had people polishing her cigarette lighters for her every morning. Well, that was a different time, wasn't it? Now, can you imagine? But of course, she did look glamorous and she did look decadent, and that's really what helped sell her image. But it was a habit that she wanted to kick. But she couldn't, not because she was nervous like her father, King George. She openly said that she realised it calmed his anxiety, etc. Naturally, like a lot of women of that age, she smoked to keep her figure down, right? But the other side of the coin was this. She smoked Chesterfields. Chesterfield cigarettes were very strong back in the day, and Margaret, well, apparently that was her favourite, literally, brand. And wherever she went, they had to have a supply in stock. Now, when she went to nightclubs and stuff like that, they would surreptitiously place a packet on the white linen table, say at the nightclub, and then get the staff photographer to come in and take a picture. And then they would, yes, leak that to the press so that people would realise that Chesterfields, you know, were her brand. Hence the reason she very cleverly swapped to a cigarette holder, numerous ones from Dunhill and Gifts, etc. So she couldn't be snapped near the cigarette box. But what happened was this. The company basically said, listen, you know, we know you're a fan of the brand and we'll give you whatever you want, you know, you don't have to do an ad or anything like that, but surreptitiously you could just be with the packet. And she thought about this, not because of the money, but because she thought, well, she could give this to the charity. But then, as she pointed out, it would be bad to give something that does create illness to a charity, no matter what the sum was. They kept upping the money, but she said no. And so the deal, which I found fascinating, was that basically they did deliver cigarettes to Margaret, complimentary, right, to Kensington Palace, but she wouldn't promote them. She said, no, I don't care what you're offering. It's very kind if you wish to donate them, and you won't get a royal warrant or anything like that, but if you want to donate them, that's very sweet. But it didn't matter what money they were going to give her. And as I said, she could have gone to 7, 8, 9, 10 charities, and we're talking a lot of money way back in the 1940s and 50s. She simply said no. And it's fascinating to think that while she desperately wanted to give up smoking and even had a lung operation in the 80s, well, she simply couldn't. It seemed to be now part and parcel of her look. But more importantly, some people say brought on a lot of her later health problems. But either way, it's refreshing to find that she stuck to her guns and simply wouldn't cave in, even for large amounts of money. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.